Good morning. My name is Jackie Dzelski. I'm President and CEO here at the Manatee Chamber, and we are grateful that you have joined us for this next part in our Workforce Wellness webinar series. This series is presented in partnership with Centerstone, and we are grateful to Chelsea, who you will meet in just a few moments here, for joining us to share her expertise on what has become a very important topic in a short period of time here, not just in our community, but really across our country and across the globe, which is how do we balance family while working from home? And I am excited to hear from Chelsea about tips for managing family dynamics while working and running businesses, nonprofit organizations, and agencies here in the Manatee, Sarasota region. Again, I share my thanks with All Trust Insurance for jumping on as a sponsor. What I would like to do now is introduce you to Chelsea Hernandez. Chelsea is the Manager of Medical Services and Adult Recovery Services at Centerstone. She's worked in a variety of clinical roles ranging from adolescent residential treatment, outpatient therapy, intensive community-based programming, and she is currently the Manager of Medical Services and Adult Recovery. She oversees Centerstone's medical clinical department and adult case management. Chelsea is a licensed clinical social worker, so you'll see the LCSW credentials after her name, and has been working with Centerstone for several years. She's a certified trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapist, which she may tell us a little bit more about what exactly that means. And she is also specializing work with children and families. Chelsea, look forward to the presentation, and the floor is yours.
Well, good morning. Like Jackie said, my name is Chelsea Hernandez, and I am the manager of our medical services and adult recovery services here at Centerstone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you all this morning. This is also a topic that's very relevant for me as well, being a mother of two and then also one on the way. It's been very interesting trying to kind of navigate this life while working from home and then also continuing to try to help take care of my family and children at home as well. So today we'll focus a little bit about that family work-life balance, and specifically because of this COVID-19 pandemic. We'll talk a little bit about our family structures, how those have maybe shifted in recent weeks. I'll talk about some of the main topics I've been hearing from staff and other people in our area about challenges and barriers with this transition. I'm hoping to give you a few tips that you can all incorporate in your own homes that can be helpful as we continue this transition with this work and home life balance, and then also end with some of our resources at Centerstone and contact information. So as we think about our families, family life has really, it's differed over the years. So the nuclear family is not what it used to be 100 years ago. And our family structure even today with this pandemic has shifted as well. So as you think of your family structure, who would you include in your family today? Many of us have kind of quarantined and have limited the times that we're spending with other people that we might have naturally been getting together with. Some of my friends I know and family members might have limited their contact with maybe one neighbor or just a few family members. I know myself, my family has kind of stayed to themselves and then just my parents, and then haven't necessarily been interacting with some of my extended family. So everybody has a little bit of a different definition of who they're including maybe in their circle right now. As you kind of reflect on your own lives, I want you just to take a second to think, how has this been different for you? How has this shifted your schedule and your day-to-day routine? I know this has been challenging for many of us to kind of shift this focus and being so familiar with getting together with friends and other family members to then kind of have made our circle much smaller in recent weeks. Thinking again through maybe some of your own challenges, what are some of the issues, barriers, or questions that might have arisen for you all as we've navigated this transition? One thing that I have heard repeatedly is that our schedules are different. So whether this is all of a sudden now you don't have that 45-minute commute in the morning, you've had to all of a sudden become teachers, daycare providers, caregivers within your home, I think the majority of us have really kind of started to see a shift in our typical schedule. And that has created many challenges in being able to balance our time and being able to, give 100% to our family when we're at home, if we're also having to focus on our work as well. And at the end, we can maybe talk too about some of the other barriers that you guys have all maybe encountered over these last 4 to 8 weeks. I know we've all kind of been in this situation with different periods of time quarantining. So today I want to talk about a few tips that clinicians and experts have kind of come up with together that we think could be very helpful as you continue to balance your work and home life together. Again, I know we've kind of been in this already for a number of weeks, so many of you might have already kind of figured out some of the tips and tricks that work well for you at home with your family. And I hope that these strategies can continue to help you feel motivated and successful and productive as you continue working from home and also balancing your family life as well. So as we kind of think about this transition, one of the most important things to kind of start off with is setting the ground rules. Thinking into your own schedule, what do I need to be successful from working at home? As we kind of identify what we need, we can then kind of figure out where we need to go from there. Together as a family, it's very important to come up with these needs. So not only focusing on, your own individual needs, but then also what does your significant other need to be successful in their day-to-day routine? What do your children need to be successful? This has all shifted for everyone. So everybody might have a few different needs in regards to what's going to work for them on a day-to-day basis. And those needs might also shift over time. Thinking through to what parts of my day need to be very rigid, where I cannot be interrupted, versus other parts of my day where maybe I have a little bit more flexibility to help out with providing snacks for the children or, being interrupted throughout the day. So once we've kind of laid the ground rules and are able to really identify what we need at home to be successful as we continue to work, the next thing we really want to do is then identify some specific goals for ourselves. If any of you are like me, there's been days where it's been challenging to maybe feel motivated. We're not in our normal routine. And so it's hard sometimes to kind of shift into that work mode, especially if you're working from home. A helpful idea could then be setting individual goals for yourself on a weekly basis. So whether that's 1 to 2 goals, I need to finish this report by the end of the week. I need to make sure my desk and office space is clean and ready to go for the next morning. Those goals can really differ. And then also incorporating some family goals as well. So again, not only focusing just on your individual needs, but who else is within your home and what could you guys set together that would feel like a successful goal that you could reach by the end of the week. The goals don't always necessarily have to feel super productive. They can also be fun. So at the end of the week, on Friday, we can celebrate together by watching a movie and eating popcorn. Or we can have a game night, or dedicating yourself, okay, I'm going to cook at least 2 nights a week. If we allow ourselves some of these goals, then it also helps us feel successful if we're able to attain these goals each week, which then also helps increase our motivation. As we've set our goals, we want to make sure that we are really incorporating some flexible routines into our goal setting. Our routines might shift from day to day to week and on a monthly basis now. And so really trying to figure out, what does a routine look like? Many of us might wake up in the morning and listen to NPR or the news, or or something as we're getting ready, I would really encourage you to keep those morning routines as similar as possible, as if you were coming into the office. It's very challenging to be productive if you are maybe doing your work in bed or in your pajamas. And so one thing we found is as you continue to kind of keep with these similar routines, it also helps with the shift from home life to work life. If you have younger children in the home or children in general, creating visual cues or using apps can be very, very helpful as well. One specific thing that we've talked about with some of our staff here are creating these visual cues for kids in the sense of if you have an office space or you have an area where you're working, using different colored signs, and you can post these signs on your doors. And so a red sign means, please, you can't interrupt me. I'm in a very serious business meeting or what the case may be. Yellow might be, okay, I'm still working, but I can be interrupted if needed. And then green could be, come on in, I'm working, but I can be interrupted. And so those colored signs might be a little bit more understandable for our children as they're trying to navigate and understand why their parents might be at home, but can't be 100% available to play with them at all times. Another thing, as we've been building our routines, is to not forget to check in with one another. As we go to work, oftentimes we're with our families maybe in the morning, and then we're gone at work for 8+ hours a day, and then we're able to check back in with our family when we return home. That's a little bit more challenging now as we are interacting with family members throughout the entire day. So try to remember to check in with one another, whether it's your significant other or spouse, hey, what can you do? I have a few hours that I can be a little bit more free and flexible today. Or, hey, I have a meeting at 3 that I really can't be interrupted with. Can I help take the kids out for a walk? Or the dog needs to go out, or things like that, so that you can kind of check in and work together as a team to make life work at home and to flow as well as it can in this period of time. Embracing flexibility. So if there's one thing to take out of today's training, it is flexibility, and you'll hear this word often. We've kind of all been forced to become flexible in the last 4 to 8 weeks. We've really had to kind of adapt to new ways of working and learning, teaching some of us. And so being able to embrace flexibility and being aware of what other people need within our family is very important. Paying attention to the pacing of your family members' learning styles. One thing I've noticed with my daughter as she was in school is, if we can get 1 or 2 assignments done first thing in the morning, then she can have a few times throughout the day where she's able to just kind of have some breaks in there, and then it allows her to kind of focus better to finish the last few assignments that she has. So trying to figure out, okay, what works best? Is it harder to maybe have somebody stay focused during the day while you're working? I know other workers here at Centerstone have had more success when they've engaged their children in school later in the day, when they have had more time to sit with them. School is almost over for many of us, for many of our children. And so this can be another time to shift and understand what life is going to look like now through summer. Sometimes summer, there's less structure. And so that can be a positive thing. And then that can also be another challenge too. So trying to figure out what works best for each family member, and being able to be flexible to those learning styles can be helpful. Continue to encourage interest development as well. We talk a lot about this Montessori philosophy. There's an example that I was given about one of our coworkers' children who was so excited to teach their father about Minecraft and his world on Minecraft and this whole computerized building of this world. And the father did not really understand this at all, but the child was so excited to teach the dad about this game and to play this game with this dad. And that's a perfect example of this self-paced learning that can also be useful and helpful during this time as well. That it doesn't have to just be very structured, school, traditional. It can also be exploratory and self-guided at the same time. So as we're working from home, I know many of you have probably already created designated workspaces. And again, this is very helpful to continue to help you transitioning from your home time to your work time. So if you think through your own workspace, what does your workspace look like at home? Do you have your own office where you can close the door? Do you work from the dining room table? Do you work from your patio? I know I myself have worked in multiple locations throughout the house depending on what I'm doing, and also depending on who's within my house at that time. And so trying to figure out, okay, what does your workspace look like? Again, this is kind of where we don't necessarily want to continue working from our bed or somewhere that we try to associate a little bit more with kind of rest and relaxation at home. One of the physicians I work with was saying the second he walks down his stairs, then he knows he's in home mode. But when he walks up the stairs, he knows he kind of shifts gears towards being able to kind of get in his work mode. So whatever that transition looks like for you can be really helpful to set up that designated space for you to be able to kind of shift in your mind, okay, it's time to then now work. Even if that's 2 steps over to the dining room table from the kitchen. Also, be really aware of your time. A lot of the feedback that I've received from staff is sometimes they're more productive and they're actually devoting more hours to work. And I think this might be too because of, like I said, there's not maybe a commute to work anymore. You don't always necessarily have those day-to-day distractions of people coming in and out of your office, even walking down the halls or to the break room. We don't necessarily have that time so naturally structured within our day-to-day life at home. And so being able to kind of give yourself a little grace at times to schedule some of those breaks within your day. So whether it's walking around the block or taking a break to eat a snack. I had a staff member say she needed to just take a bike ride around the block. And then by the time she came back, she was in a very different mind space to then be able to kind of get back to work and be productive again. I think naturally, as we're working from home, it feels like we need to kind of stay focused and be productive. And, you know, that it's true, but also being able to give ourselves, you know, time within our day to kind of take a little break once in a while too. And that's actually been proven to be helpful and help staff be more productive as well. And then also staying in your lane. So again, we're oftentimes wearing multiple hats now at home. Many of us were parents, employees, and then also had to become teachers, and now might have to be summer camp counselors or caregivers for other adults within our home too. And so trying to figure out your time and when you need to kind of put on all those different roles and hats and where that fits best throughout your day. And this again is a good time to kind of communicate with the others in your home about what parts of your day you might be able to be a little bit more flexible in, but also being careful too not to jump into some of the other roles that family members are working. I've seen a lot of social media posts about, you know, my husband's work voice or different ways that spouses and significant others and family members have been surprised in the ways in which their other family members in their home interact and communicate and kind of see their work life at home. That's something that family members oftentimes don't necessarily see. So we're kind of all adapting and trying to figure out how one another work in our home setting as well. Communication, again, is so key in making this work at home. We are with each other maybe a lot more than we are traditionally familiar with. And so, like I had said earlier, the transition from, okay, goodbye, I'm going to work, has all of a sudden now shifted to 2 steps over to the dining room table or a few steps down the hall into the office. So some things that are really helpful to kind of be aware of relate to communication. And I'm not sure how many of you might be familiar with the dialectical behavioral therapy, but we focus specifically on a few different skills that we would say enhance interpersonal effectiveness. So the ways in which we interact with other people. So we have the Dear Man skill, which is an acronym that really focuses on helping us express what we want or need from somebody. So the DEAR stands for describing what we want, expressing it clearly, being assertive, and then also reinforcing that statement. And as we're doing that, we want to be mindful, we want to be present in the moment, we want to appear confident in what we need, and then we also want to be able to negotiate, because we might not always get what we want. The Give skill is focusing specifically on maintaining healthy relationships. So we are all experiencing stress, maybe like we haven't experienced stress before. And so as we're stressed, we might be a little bit quicker to be a little bit testy to those that we're living with in our homes. So the Give skills really helps us remember to be gentle with others, to be interested in what other people have to say, validate those people's feelings to help them feel heard, and then also be easy-mannered. So, try not to be defensive and being open to communication. Those skills can really help continue to nurture and continue to support the relationships that you have within the home. And then your FAST skills really focus on continuing to respect yourself when situations might be challenging. So being fair with yourself, apologizing when needed to, sticking to your values so that you're not being pushed in directions you don't feel comfortable with, and then also being truthful. We all have maybe different ideas of when we want to reintegrate in society or get back together with friends or come back into the office for work. And we all have different comfort levels with that. And so to be able to use the FAST skills continues to help you feel good about your values and where you stand on that. Taking breaks is another way that we can really communicate with people. We talked a little bit about building these breaks into your schedule. So we kind of naturally have these breaks going on throughout our day-to-day functioning at work. So it's important to make sure we're building these breaks too in our day-to-day functioning at home as well. We might need to share those breaks with our coworkers or clients that we're working with, or maybe our family members. Hey, I block off my time from 12 to 1 because I'm helping make lunch and get things ready for the rest of the day. Or, I got 2 breaks here where I got to walk outside, take the dog out. Those breaks are important, and then making sure we're communicating those breaks with one another so people know what's going on. As we continue to lean into change, we want to be really mindful of our productivity and what's working at home. But even more so, we want to know what that process is. What about that process is successful, or what's maybe not working? Once we have that recipe on knowing what that process is that really works, then we can kind of incorporate that process a little bit more within our day-to-day life at home, which then would also enhance our productivity. So that's another good thing to kind of reflect on individually, and then together as a family. What days have gone really well, and what did we do within that day that felt like it went better than some other days? And you can kind of look vice versa too, like what was a really challenging day working at home, and what about that day made it so challenging? Those are some good things to continue to self-reflect on during this time. And then also really knowing your limits and communicating them with your supervisor. Whether these limits are related to technology or equipment or day-to-day pieces of your job. Knowing your limits, I think, is very important. I know we over here at Centerstone have really tried to troubleshoot with staff about, what's going well at home? What do you need? There's some staff that we work with that might have poor connectivity issues. And so trying to figure out, can we get them a Wi-Fi connection so that they can continue to do what we need them to do at home successfully? Or do they need an office chair many of us are working from our dining room tables. And so after a while, that can cause some back pain and some problems if we're sitting at the same dining room table for an extended period of time. So, maybe I need a special cushion or a different chair, or at work, I have 3 monitors I use. And when I go home, I have my little 12-inch laptop. And so that makes it a little bit more challenging when I'm running multiple reports and trying to address emails. So trying to understand, your limits, what you need to be successful, and what's maybe also possible to be able to incorporate in your day-to-day life. And then finally, we always want to note our physical health. Being able to kind of focus on getting outside. We live in Florida, which I know a lot of other states were not so lucky to be able to have such wonderful weather through this spring that we've had. And so being able to get outside, having a little vitamin D, walking around, taking those breaks is great for your physical health as well. Being aware of your eating habits. Are you eating more now that you're home? Are you eating less? Are you allowing yourself healthy snacks throughout the day to stay energized so that you can be productive and motivated? And then also finally, just being gentle with yourself. This is a huge shift for all of us. And so to allow yourself to be kind and to understand that we are doing the best we can with what we have right now. And that we're all in this together, trying to figure out the best ways for us to move forward and be productive. At Centerstone, we are always wanting to strive to deliver care that changes people's lives, and we do have multiple services that are available, whether that be mental health or substance abuse. We have a care line that we would like to promote. It's open 24/7. So if you just need a little extra support, somebody to talk to, this care line is available for you. And then we also have our outpatient care services and our addiction services listed below. So if I have any questions, I'll open it up back to Amy.
All right, thank you, Chelsea. That was a lot of really great information and reminders for us about how we need to be intentional, but also flexible during this time. So thank you very much. I'm pretty sure every single example that you gave, I was writing down because I'm going home today and sitting down to talk, about my family a little bit further about it. One of the questions that I hear a lot in terms of a lot of people, even on this webinar, are employers and employees. And so I was thinking about, how do you use these same tips that you're talking about with a family in the workplace, like with your work family or your work team? So is there a benefit to having that initial conversation that you were talking about setting goals and kind of looking at schedules? As an employer, is there a benefit to having some kind of similar conversation with the team?
Yes, definitely. I would highly encourage as much communication as possible. I know specifically with our teams, through this whole transition, we transitioned to telehealth fairly quickly. And so we went from daily check-ins to, check-ins every other day, to now we have check-ins weekly. And those check-ins are really focused on, okay, what does life look like now that we're working from home? What is realistic? What's got to be different? I know not all of the services we were able to provide via telehealth right away, just due to some challenges. So then trying to kind of shift that and talk about, as a supervisor and manager, what is my expectation of my staff? And then also from above me, what's my expectation as a manager? So I think, yes, definitely having those conversations and setting goals as a team. What does productivity look like now that we're working from home? It might not be the same as when we were in the office. And why is that? What are the barriers and challenges? And is that realistic to try to shift and incorporate now that we're working at home? Or does that have to look different? And so that we're all on the same page and that we know, okay, this is the new expectation because life looks different today at home.
Great, thank you. We do have a question that just posted about communications. And so it goes to, a lot of how we're communicating now. I mean, we have Teams and we have Zoom, but a lot of it has come down to written on emails and texts, and how the difference between an in-person conversation or a conversation on the phone versus emails and text. So do you have any suggestions on maybe best ways to communicate outside of the family setting, but within the work team setting?
Yes, yeah. We, that is something definitely that we've had to coordinate as well, and trying to figure out what conversations would be more beneficial face-to-face. And when I say face-to-face, I am referring to kind of videoing, Zoom. And so I know, especially more challenging situations that maybe you have multiple people involved in, that could have all of a sudden an email string list of 25 replies, would be very beneficial then to maybe say, you know, hey, it seems like there's a bunch of people on this topic, or we have a lot of different questions. Is there time we can get together for 15 minutes just to really quickly chat with one another? I think that's very important, because with all of the email and, you know, even Zoom is sometimes challenging to kind of read people's body language and understand how people are feeling in situations. But if video is the best we can do at this point, I would encourage some of those more challenging conversations, or some of those conversations where you feel like, you know, maybe you guys aren't communicating, or there's miscommunication, or it's a little bit more challenging, to kind of have those quick conversations via Zoom or on the phone, because a lot of things can get missed as you're emailing back and forth or IMing one another on your computers. So as much face-to-face connection, I think, as we can have is important, just to be able to feel that connection. And it is also helpful in clearing up some of that communication that can be miscommunicated.
So that goes along a little bit with how to approach, as someone who is working at home, or you know, and has the family dynamic going on, how to approach or some ideas or best practices on how to communicate family challenges that you're having at home with your work team. Like how, what would be the best way to approach that?
Yeah, I think specifically, again, being able to, as managers or supervisors of businesses and programs, to be able to set that time aside, maybe within your team meetings, for people to be able to share some of those challenges that they're experiencing at home. Some of us might have been able to adapt and have great ideas that we could share with one another. But unless we communicate that, we might not know. And so whether it's just to be supported, to say, oh my goodness, yes, I am struggling with school and trying to teach my child at home too. And just that validation from one another, or potentially somebody has other ideas that are more helpful that together you could kind of share. So, you know, opening up maybe 10, 15 minutes of your team meeting to be able to just focus on your own mental health and how things are going at home. You know, does anybody want to share any challenges that you've been having, or ways you've been addressing these successfully? I think that again speaks to kind of us being in some of these similar situations together, that we can then also support each other. And then that also kind of brings the team together too, that we all kind of have some of these similar struggles, but hey, let me help you out. This is something that worked for me.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. So there was a question about, and I think you might have addressed it, about handling diversity issues. And I think it was within the text or email realm. And so having those face-to-face interactions, I think would overcome some of that, so that you can watch body language and how people interact. Other than that, I don't see any more questions. And you actually answered a couple of mine all in the same answer, so I won't ask it, but thank you for the great tips and advice. So thank you, Chelsea and Centerstone, for putting us on and joining us in our Workforce Wellness webinar series, which now has turned into a tongue twister. The more that we say it, it sounded really good the first time, but so thank you for that, and for your dedication to supporting our community. I know you have a lot going on right now, and you guys are very busy, so thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you to our sponsor, All Trust Insurance, for supporting our efforts on broadening our seminar series into mental health. We also do, you know, business and legal and other things, but I think mental health was really a big issue as we headed in to this pandemic, and how people were going to work around it and work with each other.